In today's episode, we're combining listener Q&A and the Young Tradesperson Series by welcoming Brendon Brody of Queen City Hardwood Restoration. But first, I'm Stacy Grinsfelder.
And I'm Daniel Cantor.
This is True Tales from Old Houses, episode 107. Hi, Daniel. Welcome back.
Hi, Stacy. I missed you.
Oh, I missed you
doing?
Too. I'm good. It just wasn't the same without you last week.
I mean, I did enjoy your episode with Andy, though. It warmed my heart. And it's nice to hear from him. I love Andy.
I was thrilled he was able to do it, but I am equally thrilled that you are back.
It's good to be back.
So today we're actually combining the Q&A segment and the interview segment. So it's going to be a little bit of a different format than we usually do. But before we launch into everything, I just want to say thank you to our season 10 sponsors, the Craftsman Store and Sutherland Wells.
Thank you both very much. We have a couple little announcements today. The first being that there is still some leftover merch available on our website. There's a couple different types of sweatshirts. We still have aprons in stock. All of it is ready for immediate shipping. And if you are already shopping for the holidays or you just want a little something for yourself, head on over to truetalesfromoldhouses.com/merch and snag yourself some goodies.
Yes, and I do want to say that the last date I can ship is the 15th of December. I think it will still get to most places by the holiday. I cannot guarantee that, but 15th is the deadline for shipping this leftover merch.
Amazing. In addition, since this is the season of giving, we're very excited to be giving away a little something from our friends Ethan and Elizabeth Finkelstein at Cheap Old Houses. So they are giving us to give to you a signed copy of the Cheap Old Houses book, which is called Cheap Old Houses, An Unconventional Guide to Loving and Restoring a Forgotten Home. And my home is featured in the book along with a lot of other really amazing old house owners who have taken a similar journey to me. So, yeah.
It's beautifully written, it's beautifully photographed, and you can enter to win that book between now and December 18th at truetalesfromoldhouses.com/giveaway. Right now, there are not very many people entered in that giveaway, so your odds are very good. Our last announcement today is, of course, we would love for you to subscribe to the show and leave a rating or review if you enjoy this podcast. You may do all of that wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and we would certainly appreciate that. So now we have just a few minutes for updates. And Daniel, you've got kind of a big one, and I'm going to give this segment to you because you are the man of the hour.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so a while ago, I can't even remember if it was this season, I mentioned that my organization, the Kingston City Land Bank, had been nominated for an Excellence in Historic Preservation Award from the Preservation League of New York State, which is kind of the big preservation organization in the state. And we won. And so last night I came back from New York City where I was to accept this award. And there was a whole ceremony and it was very cool. And I'm just really, really proud of it.
Congratulations. I think that's wonderful. I'm so proud of you. And do I understand correctly that normally something like the Kingston City Land Bank wouldn't win an award like this or wouldn't be the winner? I mean, who does this award typically go to?
I would say they definitely have gotten a lot more diverse in these awards, but in general, preservation awards, and including this one, I think historically generally go to like a major public works project or like somebody, restoring a huge cathedral or a theater or something that is very kind of central to a town or city's cultural background, I guess. And in our case, we are basically renovating like pretty ordinary houses and doing it for affordable housing on a affordable housing budget. So going way back to the beginning of this effort, when the conversation started of rehabbing houses, really nobody cared at all about kind of how the houses were renovated. And so I, for several years, was kind of the only person that cared about the historic value of the homes that we were talking about. I think that you can care about multiple things at once. So, of course, I also care deeply about the mission and producing affordable housing, but I think you can do both. And so it feels a little bit like the vast majority of my adult life has been sort of trying to show people that renovations and design are kind of all about the decisions that you're making along the way. And you don't have to have a huge budget to have a beautifully restored property. It might take a lot of elbow grease. It might take a lot of kind of research and finding things at a budget and all of that, but it can absolutely be done. And so to kind of bring that background into this organization and be able to do it at this kind of scale with all of these different houses and all these different styles, like it's really felt like a culmination of kind of these experiences that I've had throughout my life that sort of all of those skills kind of came together into this thing.
Right.
I mean, we've only existed for 5 years. We've only been rehabbing houses for about 3 years. So to receive this honor kind of that early in the game, like...
Feels great, huh?
It feels really great. I'm like still kind of in shock. I mean, other winners included the people who redid Pier 57 in Manhattan.
Oh,
Just
wow.
like this massive, huge undertaking. And then there's like me,
And the Kingston City Land Bank.
We have a full-time executive director. We have 3 part-time staffers and a board of volunteers. And that's it.
That's just incredible. Wow.
And we took it all. So yeah, it was very fun. I was supposed to speak for maximum 2 minutes. Would you like to know how that panned out?
10 minutes? Did you go for 10?
6.
6.
6 minutes, 3 seconds. But I sure tried. I wrote a whole speech. And then only at this point did I turn to ChatGTP and say, about how many words would a 2-minute speech be? And it said, at a moderate pace, it would be 250 to 300 words. And I'm at like 1,400 words. So I did cut to like 800. And Brad actually filmed the whole thing like a proud parent. So maybe I'll post it on social media.
Please do. Please
actually think it was a pretty good speech. And yeah, it was totally cool and totally fun and unexpected. And Brad came down for it, which was so, so sweet. My parents came in for it.
I love it.
I've obviously told them a ton about the land bank over the years, but they've never seen a house or they haven't been involved particularly. And so it was really, I think for them, it was sort of, oh, he's not just been sort of goofing off for 5 years. This is real, which was very nice. And Ethan and Elizabeth Finkelstein were there as well.
That's wonderful.
So wonderful to see. And then a couple staff members and one other board member came. We all went to dinner afterwards. So it was me and Brad and Ethan and Elizabeth and my parents and 3 of my colleagues from the land bank. So it was a super funny group. But
that's a motley crew, isn't it?
It was totally a motley crew, but it was really fun. And I was like, Ethan and Elizabeth, do you want to come to dinner with my parents? And they were like, yeah, totally. And so, they're going to be on the Drew Barrymore in 2 days, but they're coming to dinner with my parents on Monday. It was really sweet.
There are so many things that I like about you, but one of the things that I admire the most is that you walk your talk, and winning this award is just proof of that. You're such a good example.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's worth sticking with things that are important. I think there were various moments during the creation of this organization that it really felt like this is a sinking ship. I should probably jump off of, try to find, the floating door or whatever that saved Rose and Titanic.
There was room for 2, as we both know.
As we all know. At least Leo is still with us. And yeah, so there was a lot of stick-with-itness, a lot of scrappiness. I've done demo, I've done clean-outs, I've done various, little work on these houses. I'm always the hardware guy at the end. They'll hang the old doors for me, but they're not messing with hardware. So I come in with my kit of mortises and everything and put it all together, and they think I'm a wizard. So many people come together to make things like this happen. So I don't want to make it sound like it's all me, but I'm the chairman of the board and I always have been. So
yeah,
I've kind of had to steer this ship, and it's been a wild ship to steer, but it's very cool. So thank you for letting me take all that time to brag.
I'm happy to have you share it with everyone. I think it's wonderful.
Thank you.
Our guest today is Brendon Brody from Queen City Hardwood Restoration, serving the Buffalo, New York area. Now, Daniel, Brendon and his crew, they were the ones who actually sanded the staircase treads at my house. And that included that nightmarish job of hand scraping those little bits of landing between the balusters. I'm so glad they did it and not me.
It is the worst job. I did it on my own and said never again.
Oh, it's terrible. One of the things that he says on his website is that he tackles every new job with an old school work ethic and a combination of modern and vintage equipment. And I just think that is so cool. There is no one else that I would trust to touch the floors here at Blake Hill House. Just to clarify for our listeners, I did this interview solo because Brendon is both someone that I know well and he lives very close to me. So he came over to my house and we had a really fun conversation. Brendon is a young tradesperson. And then I took all of our leftover questions that we received from listeners, all of you, and threw them at him to get his answers.
Hi, my name is Brendon Brody. I am the owner of Queen City Restoration, a hardwood floor restoration company, and we've been in business since 2015.
Hi, Brendon. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me on.
I should have warned you that I have a podcast voice that may not be exactly my day-to-day voice.
It's all right. I like it.
I automatically turn into podcast host mode as soon as I hit that record button.
Well, I'm new to this, so this is my first time, and I'm very excited.
Well, excellent. Excellent. Or I've told the listeners before that you and I actually know each other. We live pretty close to each other. We're nearly neighbors, if you...
I was over for Friendsgiving.
You were over for
Yes, I
Friendsgiving.
was.
Yeah, that's been a while. We should do that again sometime.
Absolutely.
Well, you're here as part of the Young Tradesperson series that we're doing this season because we've had a lot of guests on who have chosen the trades later in life. Maybe they've had 1, 2, even 3 careers, and then they've decided, oh, I want to do something with my hands. And then somehow they end up in the trades and they're very satisfied. But what we don't hear from, or who we don't hear from enough, are people who chose the trades from the beginning. So that's why we are highlighting people this season who have done that, because I think there's a job out there and a career out there for everyone. And sometimes we are encouraged to take a path that isn't right for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I would like to know, I guess, how did you get started?
I came to Buffalo for Canisius College to go to school there and to play soccer on scholarship. So I came here in 2007 and I had every intention to go get a 4-year degree, which I did, and maybe get an office job like my father had for his entire life. That was just what I was told to do. You're going to go to college for 4 years and you're going to get a job with that degree. So that was what I had in mind. Came up here and as I was in school, I wasn't interested in anything when I was really 18. And I was always someone who, a mover and a shaker, someone who liked to work with their hands, liked to get things done. And it turns out that I didn't want to sit down in a cubicle all day, or I didn't want to get that office job because my father wasn't very happy with his anyway. So I think as time went on, I realized as I got a little bit older and closer to graduation that maybe I wanted to do something for myself. And I did get a degree in business management. So I was like, okay, I can run my own business, and learned a lot while in school.
So it's interesting that you went ahead and got your 4-year degree. I think it's really common when people are in college and they're like, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what I'm doing. Did you say business administration or business management?
Business management.
Yeah, business management. That's a really helpful degree before you're starting your own business. Right. So how did you get started restoring wood floors?
Okay, so while I was in school, I would do a work study, and I would swipe athletic center ID cards so the kids could get in. And it was so boring. And I'm like, I can't sit still. So a couple of the guys on the soccer team were working in the Elmwood Village in Buffalo with a crew and a company that would renovate apartments. So they had 3 people. One guy was the money guy. He was a big restaurant owner. I won't say his name, but he was the guy that was the money guy. And then the other guy owned all the property and managed it. And the third guy ran a team of people to renovate. So I would start working there, painting, smashing walls, demo, just all the lowest on the chain things you could do. But I loved it, just learning everything, doing everything. Every day was something different, but it was all so much more fun to me than just sitting in a chair in the athletic center. And I got paid a little bit better. So one of the guys on my soccer team from England rented to the landlords, and he was the one who introduced me. And he also worked with them as well. So through them, I started getting into the trades and working that way. And over the summer, I would work with them all summer until school started. And then I would stay in Buffalo, and that would enable me to train soccer over the summer with the guys that were around and stay in shape, and then work doing renovations. And I enjoyed it a lot. Those guys did everything themselves. The only things they didn't do were granite countertops, because I don't think anyone really does that themselves. So they had all the equipment to sand hardwood floors. They had terrible equipment looking back, but it was base equipment. It worked.
Now you know, right?
And now I know it wasn't good, but we kind of navigated it together. They didn't know what they were doing. I didn't know what I was doing. So there wasn't the sense of I had to do a great job, because they were kind of guiding me, showing me how to sand. We were all kind of amateurs doing this together. So I got pretty good at it. And soon I became the guy that would run the machines. And whenever they had hardwood floors to do that day, I was the guy that would pretty much be doing that part of the job. And I liked it. It was something where you could, at the end of the day, appreciate the work you did, because you could physically see it. That was satisfying to me. Like, you'd come into an ugly floor, and at the end of the day, it would look beautiful. So that to me was like definitely satisfying.
Mm-hmm. That doesn't always happen in an office job, does it?
I don't know if that ever happens. Yeah.
Open-ended. It's too open-ended.
Right.
Exactly. So you were working for someone else, and then eventually what happened?
So I graduate, I get a degree. There's not a lot of well-paying jobs, and I was in some debt already, and I didn't want to go into more debt. So it was either maybe go and get my master's degree, or maybe, work for a little while. So around this time, the group of men I was working for kind of broke up the band. They kind of got into, a disagreement, and I ended up buying the machines off of one of the guys to do it. And it was a good start. I had a couple of the machines I needed. So I kind of put a little Craigslist ad out, and I said,
Craigslist? What is this Craigslist? No, I'm just kidding.
I know. No, it's terrible, but you got to start somewhere. And I would get probably the lower end jobs, but I wasn't doing high end work at that time. So, there's someone for everybody. And then I started kind of doing it on my own for a little while. And eventually my wife said, you need to get a real job, start a business. And I said, you're right. So I started LLC, and then I started Queen City Restoration. And Buffalo was Nickel City, but also known as the Queen City. And I just went with it. And around, I think it was 2015, we started Queen City Restoration. I started it by myself. So it was just me lugging in all this equipment, doing my best, right?
Yeah, that's amazing to me, because it's hard work.
It was hard work. Just carrying the equipment into the apartment was half the battle. I mean,
Sure.
not having someone else to help you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So when did you start getting people working with you? Because when you've did a project here at my house, and you had somebody working with you. And
I had a friend of mine around that time from college, and he said, I know a guy that does hardwood floors as well. And I had never met anyone who did this in the Buffalo area.
Sure.
And I was like, I got to meet this guy just to pick his brain, because I could learn a lot from him, or, whatever. So I was actually sanding this same friend's floors when he was moving out of his house. And he said, I'm going to have this guy come over and talk to you. And I must have talked to the kid for, 3 hours just that day. And I think at the end of the conversation, we decided that he was going to come work for me. So it kind of started like that. And when I got someone else, I was like, oh my goodness, this is so much better, because you can't do this stuff alone. It's such hard work.
Right. It is. It's really taxing on your body. My husband and I, we did the first floor here at the house, and I think my back still hasn't recovered. And that was like in 2019.
I can't believe you did that. I mean, they look great
Thank
looking at
you.
them right now, but when I first walked in here and you said you did it, I was shocked. I was like, first of all, it's not a hack job. You did good work.
Oh, I like to hear that. Thank you.
They're beautiful. I was more like, who did these? They're very well done. But yeah, it's not a do it yourself. It's really not.
No, it's funny because my co-host and I, we've talked about this several times on past episodes, where we did floors, and neither one of us is interested in doing it again. And this house needs the whole second floor done. And I keep thinking, yep, I'm going to be calling Brendon, because I am not doing that again. I am absolutely not doing that again.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Call me. Do it.
Okay. Yeah. So you mentioned, or the first part of this interview, you were talking about how you had received basically the message that you were supposed to go to college and get a job, and that was it. Did you feel that way in high school too? Did you feel like you got the same messages either from school, guidance counselors, family?
Yeah, I mean, it was more family. There was people in my school that had no intention to go to college in my high school, but my father went to college. My mother went to college. My older sister was in college. There was never a, do you want to go to college? It was, where are you going to go to college? I mean, that's what it was in my household, at least. So I think that's changing now, and I hope that's changing for a lot of people. I don't regret going to college at all because the experience of being a freshman, living in a dorm, getting out of your house, it's a great experience. I met my wife at college, so I definitely cannot say I regret going to college because I wouldn't have met her.
And I know her, and she's wonderful. And
Yes, she is.
no regrets on your part for sure.
Exactly. So when I pay my student loan debt every month, I think of that,
Right.
But at the same time, I think now the way the world is changing, it should be what's your plan? And the plan shouldn't necessarily be you're going to a traditional four-year college, because there's so many people needed in the trades now that I would recommend to somebody, if you have a trade you like or that you want to do, go to school for that. Don't take out all these loans right off the bat if you're not sure that's what you want to do.
Mm-hmm. That's a great idea. That's great advice. I was going to ask you if you have advice for people. I think it's hard to go against the grain sometimes. And that's one of the reasons why we're doing this series too, because I just happen to have 4 kids that are in that age range of what the heck are we going to do with our lives now? I don't know what paths they're going to choose, but I see them. I see how they are nervous about what am I supposed to do? And they feel like they're supposed to know their career path at age 18. And I think that's a disservice to young people.
Right. I think I changed my major twice by sophomore year because I was not interested in what I went there for. So, I took a lot of classes that were not helpful once I changed the major and were just a waste of money, really. So you have to know what you're going to want to do. And, if you're going to Canisius, for example, and you want to be an accountant, great. They have a great accounting program. You'll get a job out of there. But there's certain things you shouldn't do if you don't know what you want to do, So it's just the way things are changing, I think.
Right. And I'm hopeful that they are. I actually had a really nice conversation, not on the podcast, but with a retired, I don't know what they call them now. I knew them as shop teachers, basically, from the Holland School District, which is just a small little school district, maybe 15 minutes from here. And it was a real interesting conversation. I was asking him, how it had changed, because he'd worked in the district for, 30 years. So I wanted to know if the administration of the school he was working for had different goals from when he started to when he retired.
I feel like a lot of schools are taking out shop classes, or you don't see them as much anymore. And I think that's not a good thing. Not every kid is going to be a college student 4-year degree. Some kids need to learn these skills. So you can't take those out of the schools. They're very valuable.
Right. I agree. And he was mentioning that a lot of what used to be shop had turned into STEM. So even though they were doing, science, technology, I don't remember what the E means.
I don't know.
I don't know either, because I'm not a STEM
exactly.
person.
I don't know either.
I'm sure somebody will write in to let me know.
Right.
But anyway, they're focusing on STEM education, or even taking those trades and moving them to more of a computerized system.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. So kind of interesting, but I don't know. I've been really watching my kids not necessarily struggle, a little bit of struggle, I guess, but feel pressured in one way or the other. And finally just having, I finally had to just sit down and say, what do you want? And when they said, I don't know what I want, I said, okay, you don't have to know. Let's take a little bit of extra time here to figure it out, because you had a good point. When you take a class that you don't need, or you change a major, school is expensive, and you don't get that money back.
You're taking out a loan for a business, and you're the business, basically. But you're 18 years old. I didn't have a full scholarship, so I still had to, I got some academic money, a little bit of soccer money, but I still had to take out loans at 18 years old to go there fall of my freshman year, and you're already in debt. So you better know what you want to do. And It's not the worst idea to go to a community college and start getting some credits under your belt while maybe you figure out what you want to do. I don't think that's the worst thing either. And then you can transfer to the school you want. But if you do that, you will lose that freshman dorming experience, which is a lot of fun. So,
it's a toss-up, right?
It's
a give and take. You got to pick what you want, for sure. So what do you think is maybe the greatest challenge of your particular trade? And you can expand that into all trades if you have other thoughts.
I believe that it is getting started and growing from the initial onset. So my trade requires a lot of money and equipment, and the better equipment you have, the better product you can put out. So right off the bat, when I came out of college, I don't have $20,000, whatever, to buy all this equipment. So I kind of had to buy cheap and work my way up, I guess, to get better equipment and to get exposure and to get better jobs. So like I said, I put a Craigslist ad out, but you're getting like low end work and it's not always where you want to be. So the biggest help I had was one of my best friends from high school worked at a company that got new companies exposure. That's what they did. So he called me and said, hey, this is what I do. You want me to help you out? He put me on Hughes or House. I don't know, Houzz.
Oh, yeah, House. Yeah.
House.
Yeah.
Thank you. He put me on House. He put me on every internet platform you could be on. And he made me a website. And then that website, he got to show up on Google. So if I didn't have him, I'm not sure how I would have gotten enough exposure because I was on enough platforms then where all the rest of my advertising was just word of mouth. So combined with being on House, being on like Yelp, being on just being able to Google and find a website there and put all my pictures and my work on it, that was so crucial to get me to start growing. I think the biggest thing you can do is take photos of your work and do a lot of social media and post a lot in today's day and age. And if people see your work, you'll expand pretty quick. That's definitely something that's going to help you a lot in the future.
Yeah, definitely. That's really smart. And I don't often hear people admit, or not even admit, I should say. I don't often hear people say, I needed help, and so I got somebody else to help. Oftentimes, I notice that tradespeople and people who start their own businesses, I'm one of them. We just try to take it all on ourselves. We like, oh, here I am. I am the person who does everything. And then what we end up doing is everything, but not really everything well. So by hiring your friend to help you do that, that was amazing because then you could focus on what you're really, truly good at, which is restoring hardwood floors.
I'm okay with a computer. I'm not bad, but I'm not going to write and code a website. I guess there's places you can do that, but to have him do that was so priceless. I mean, unbelievable. And it honestly made everything get off the ground a lot quicker. And I'm forever grateful for him. Shout out to Will.
Well, and let's be honest too. If you're working for 40 hours, just probably more than that, restoring floors, are you really going to come home and do all your accounting and update your website? It's too much for one person. And I guess maybe I'm saying this mostly for me as well. I don't know.
I'm so tired at the end of the day after doing this. That's the one thing about the trades. I mean, I'm working with my hands. I'm so tired. And now that I have 3 little kids, it's just, I'm not going to get home and do all that. Plus I have a lot of calls to answer. I have estimates all the time. So when I get home, I almost just shut it down and don't think about it anymore.
That is so smart. So smart. Yeah, absolutely. I was going to ask you if you have concerns about your body holding up over time doing this kind of work. Or at this point in your career, are you taking precautions like team lifting and things like that that are protective of your body, which is really your tool?
Right, it is. I'm not concerned right now because I feel good, but maybe in 5 to 10 years, that answer might change a lot. I eventually do want to get more people, but right now I still enjoy doing the work. The quality control is a lot easier when I'm doing, okay? A lot of these companies, they expand too fast. They got a lot of young people in there, and then the quality of work drops a little bit. There's a couple reputable companies that we've had to go in this year alone and redo work that they did. And I was shocked to hear it was their work. The company that, I'm not going to name anyone, obviously, but when I heard the name, this is who did it, I was like, oh my goodness, they do excellent work. But maybe they got a little sloppy with it, hired some people that, didn't care. And the owner's just doing estimates and going around doing that. I'm still on the floor every day, making sure everything looks good.
Right.
So,
yeah, that's impressive. So I would ask you, I guess, as a final question for this portion of the podcast, I want to ask you, what traits do you think that you possess or that someone could possess that would make them good as a business owner, a tradesperson?
Well, work ethic, first of all, work ethic. I don't go to work and just wait for it to be 5 o'clock. I have to get things done. I have to get the job done. So I can't just kind of exist while I'm there. I have to physically get everything done, or I'm working the weekend, or it's going into next week. And we book about 2 months out, and we have 1 to 2, sometimes 3 jobs a week. So that's kind of what lights the fire is, hey, we have to get this done today, or everything's going to start backing up. So I think work ethic is obviously the easy answer, but attention to detail as well. you see people come in and their work is sloppy. I mean, you can't have that. We're working with stain, we're working with poly. You can't be getting stain on people's baseboards. You can't be not doing everything.
Swirl marks.
You got it. Scratch marks, swirl marks, scratch patterns. Everything has to be perfectly to spec. My work is there's shades of gray. I'm not framing you a pole barn. And when I say, here's your pole barn, it's done. There's levels to how good a floor can look, right? So the satisfaction of the customer, they have to see it and they have to say, wow, this looks good. I can't just do an okay job. So that's with my trade. I'm not building something physically. I'm refurbishing something that's there. So it's just a little different, I guess.
I would add you're great with people. And I think that's really helpful when you are the owner and you're doing bids, but you're also doing the work. You're really good with people.
I think thank you.
You're welcome.
But I didn't think about that, but that is true. I think I'm good at relating to all sorts of people. I've always been a people person, so I can come in and kind of see who you are, and I can get along with people very well. And I know how to make people feel like, okay, this is who I want to hire. So that is very important.
Yeah, it's important. I've been on both sides of that. I've had people do work for me and I've done work for other people. And there's something so comforting about hiring someone that you feel that you trust in your house. You trust them with the work. You trust them even if you're not at home, all these things. It's just really important to be able to trust the person that you hire.
And also coming into the job every morning, I do 2 to 3 floors a week. So we get there. Not every Monday morning, everyone's super happy at work. But when you walk through the door, this is a project someone's very excited about. So I want them to feel like I'm excited about their project as well. So I come in the house, I can't wait to get this, I can't wait to get started. You want to be all smiles. And even if I'm not in a great mood, when I get into the door, I'm saying, let's rock and roll on this. And I want them to know that this is special to them. For me, yeah, it's just the next floor. But I want them to know that I'm going to do a great job for you. And I think that's important too.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
You want to make people feel excited about, they're paying you good money, and you want to make them feel like you're not just here and moaning and groaning, and you want to be cordial and nice to people. I guess.
That is the worst. Like when you hire someone and then all they do is complain, or like they all smile and then you leave and then you can hear them like complaining about your house or complaining about something. I hate that.
Or even if they're just in a bad mood while they're there and you don't feel like you want to talk to them, or like it's just a turn off. So, you want to come in and make people feel like rock on, let's do this, man. So that's what we do. And
I would guess that if you come into a job as you do and you say, rock on, let's get this done, as soon as you portray that attitude, then you actually start to have that attitude as well. I would guess.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I do love it. It's so satisfying to restore an old floor. So I do love it. I got to keep it up every day. Come in and be motivated. And the guy that works with me is great at doing that as well. He always shows up and he's ready to go. That's what I love.
That's great. All right. Well, we have to take a short break. I have some listener questions that I'm going to ask you to tackle here after our break, if you are ready for that.
Let's do it.
Okay. We'll be back in a minute.
True Tales from Old Houses is supported by The Craftsman Store, another excellent resource from Scott Seidler of the Craftsman blog. The Craftsman Store is your go-to place for old house tools and supplies.
Once again, our friend Scott has taken the hassle out of tracking down the specialized old house supplies we need, and he's put it all in one place for us. It's a cozy little online hardware store full of books, tools, and replacement parts. Something he has on the site now that might be relevant to a lot of you is that he has downloadable plans for storm window and screen combos, interior storm windows, even bat houses and an Adirondack chair. I thought that was kind of cool. I did not know he had plans for that.
That's so cool.
We often think of major online retailers as being the quickest way to get something. However, the Craftsman Store ships very fast, and they score extra points as far as I'm concerned for having an actual human working in customer service.
Absolutely. So for everything from window restoration to plaster repair, the Craftsman Store has everything you need to do the job like a pro. So check it out today at thecraftsmanstore.com and save 10% on your orders if you use the code TRUETALES. True Tales from Old Houses is also supported by Sutherland Wells. All of Sutherland Wells products are handcrafted in Providence, Rhode Island with the highest quality sustainably grown tung oil. Tung oil, which is native to China, has been used for centuries as a durable finish for wood, metal, and stone.
And unlike polyurethane, tung oil finish penetrates the surface of the wood, so it flexes and it contracts as the conditions change. And that makes it the perfect pre-finish or protectant for everything from furniture to window sash and sills.
And Stacy, you just tackled a project with Sutherland Wells, didn't you?
I did. I finished the wainscoting in the upstairs bathroom, and it is so gorgeous. Before I sealed it, the wood was marked with all these water spots, and it was stained with soap splatters. It was so disgusting, so gross. All I did was clean it, and then I sanded all that wood down to 120 grit, freshened and sealed the wood with 2 Sutherland Wells products from the Murdoch's line. Both the contractor and plumber, they were shocked by how good it looks. They had no faith whatsoever that I was going to be able to bring that back. And the Murdoch's line worked really well.
It looks amazing. I saw you applying it on Instagram, and how satisfying.
Whether you're working on siding, hardwood floors, furniture restoration, cutting boards, you name it, Sutherland Wells has an entire product line.
To learn more about all of the products that Sutherland Wells has available to you, visit Sutherland Wells, that's WELLES, SutherlandWells.com. And to save 10% on your first order, use the coupon code TRUETALES.
We're back.
All right.
In the past, we did a big painting episode where I had somebody on here. It was actually, his name is Scott Seidler. He's one of my sponsors. He's an excellent tradesperson, window restoration, really highly regarded in the industry. We did a whole paint episode where I just asked him questions about painting and different types of paint. But we've never done one about hardwood floors. So I am thrilled that you are here. These questions were actually submitted by our listeners. And during the Q&A portion, Daniel and I have been answering hardwood questions as we could. And then we kind of piled up the leftovers. And those are what I'm offering to you today.
The leftovers, lovely.
You get the leftovers,
I'll
yes.
take it.
This is the post-Thanksgiving hardwood floor questionnaire.
Okay.
All right. So Emily Bell, she's a listener. She actually asked 2 questions. And they're kind of long, so we might go off on a couple little tangents during these
That's
questions, but we'll see. Her first question is, she wants to know how to fix a spot that is worn from a chair in the dining room. She said at this point, it looks scratched in a lighter, chalky way because the chair has been sliding across the floor. The rest of the floor, she said, is great. So they're not ready to redo the whole thing or anything. She also states that she doesn't know what finish they use, although I can make a guess based on the chalky finish she's describing. And she is afraid to do anything because she doesn't want that spot to stand out even more. So do you have advice for Emily?
Sure. What would your guess be on the finish?
I guess it's polyurethane.
That's what my guess would be too. The chair, when you buff polyurethane, it kind of turns chalky and foggy until you recoat it. So I would think that that chair is just kind of wearing it down a little bit there. What I would do is I would tape off the individual boards with some blue painter's tape. Well, they actually have hardwood floor specific blue tape.
Oh, good to know.
So it doesn't pull up the finish. So I would tape off those areas that are scratched and I would buff them by hand. So I would get some like 220 grit sandpaper, even some rough steel wool if she had it, or like 000, and just lightly sand by hand all the areas that are taped off and get those scratches out as much as possible. Don't go through the poly to the wood, which I don't think you could with, some 220. It would take a lot. And then
that would take a lot,
it
wouldn't
would take a lot.
All day scrubbing with that 220.
Right. And then get a tack rag or, vacuum it very well. Then get a paintbrush and paint some more polyurethane down right over the boards. Go light. Don't need to go heavy. You don't want to have any heavy spots. When you're applying polyurethane, heavy is not what you want to do. If you go too light, you can always put a little more on, but if you leave a pool, it's going to be really hard to remedy that. And then brush some poly in those areas, let it dry and peel that tape back up. The areas might be a little bit shinier, but over time, they'll probably even out. The difficult part is to figure out, do you have a satin, do you have a matte, or do you have a semi-gloss finish? Probably going to be somewhere in the satin area. I'd have to see the floor, but you could visually see if it's satin or if it's semi-gloss. And if you use the wrong finish, well, tape it off again, buff it again, and try a matte finish this time or whatnot. So that's kind of what I do for spot repairs. Just do individual boards, because if you try to just blend it without taping anything off, it's just going to look like you spilled something on there.
Oh, that's a good point.
So you
Mhm.
kind of have to stop along the seams of a board. Even though it might be a little shinier over time and with cleaning, it'll probably even out. And I can tell you it'll probably look better than it does now.
Sure.
So that's kind of my
All right.
thoughts.
So I have a question about knowing the difference between an oil poly or a water poly. Do you have any tips for determining whether it's an oil-based poly or a water-based?
Well, if your floor isn't stained, it's super easy because most water-based polyurethanes aren't going to amber as much. So an oil-based poly is going to turn the floor that golden oak color because oil has, a natural tendency to do that. And the newer polys that are water-based now are called non-ambering, and they keep your floor a lot blonder. So if you don't have a stained floor and you have a very dark golden color, you're going to probably have an oil on there. But if you do have a stained floor, your method is as good as mine because it's hard to tell. But I will say this, when you go and buff a floor that's been refinished and has been, cured for a long time, you can put oil poly over water. You can put water poly over oil as long as they're cured. So if I go to buff a floor and just screen it or buff it and put a fresh coat down, and it's a floor that's been done years ago, I don't have to worry about that as much because
Good
it's,
to know.
yep, as long as you buff it and do a good job, the poly will adhere.
Okay, excellent. The second question that Emily has is that she believes that this is the last sand down that they'll be able to do on the floors. This is the last time. And she wants to know how to keep them as nice as possible.
So as floors get sanded, the biggest thing to look for is the tongue and the groove where they meet. The side of the board that has the groove on it, where the tongue slides in, the top of that groove will be the first thing to go. So in Buffalo, we have 3/8 inch thick hardwood by 1.5 inches. It's very common in Buffalo. It's all over the place. We see it all the time. Now
3/8 or 3/4?
3/8.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's tiny.
Yeah, it's very tiny.
Oh my gosh. I thought, seriously, I'm like, what? That can't be right.
I don't know if it's a Buffalo thing or whatever, but it's all over. I mean, I
Wow.
see it maybe 70% of the time. Yeah, it's 3/8. So it's half of your 3/4 floor that you would normally get, right?
Sure.
So think about the top of that, where the tongue goes into the groove. The top of that groove is probably, I don't know, 1/8 inch at most. What I'll see when I go into an estimate was, we call them breakouts, where you'll see the top of the groove snapping out because it's so thin that they just, as people walk on it and the floor moves, they start to break. So if I go into a floor job and someone wants me to give them a quote and I see breakout areas where the grooves are breaking or they're beginning to, right away I tell them this might be too far gone. So a lot of these floors in Buffalo will have a square edge so that it's not tongue and groove, and the boards just butt up to each other and they're face nailed. Those floors, you can sand them a lot thinner because you don't have the fear of breakouts. And now when you buy a new floor, pretty much going to put in 3/4, most people are, you're going to get a lot more sanding out of that floor because it's got a thicker groove. So I kind of determine it by that. And to answer the question, if I go into a house and I know this is probably nearing the end of a refinish, I'm going to put if possible, I'm going to put a 2K water base finish down, which is a 2-component. And this is like a very new thing in the industry. And as things go greener, just in general in the world, water base is becoming better than oil base. Oil base is tried and true for 50 years. Everyone used it. It's great. But now the water bases are surpassing them in chemical resistance, scratch resistance, wear and tear, and everything. So if it was the last sand on a floor, I would put down a 2-component water-based finish. I would do 3 coats of it. And every few years, depending on wear and tear, I'd have someone come in and buff it and put a fresh coat down. Maybe not every few years, but that's how I would. If you start to see wear marks, you need to put another coat of polyurethane down. Because what happens is the polyurethane wears off in the hallway, and then the hallway starts to look terrible. But the corner of the dining room where no one walks, it looks beautiful. So you need to keep that build up in those areas and just keep up on it before it starts to fail, I guess.
Right. Okay. So I guess my follow-up question would be, let's say she can't sand this anymore and we think she has a polyurethane finish based on her first question. How should she care for these? Like, should she use a vacuum or a mop or a broom or what? What kinds of things can she do to keep the polyurethane looking good, I should say?
So water is the enemy of all floors. Water is going to ruin a floor essentially. So when I tell people to mop your floors, I say use very little water. You do not need to soak your floor. You don't need to get your floor wet that much at all. Wring the mop out. And now they have hardwood floor specific soaps. All the main brands, Bona is a big brand. They have soap in Wegmans. They have it in Home Depot. Duraseal is another brand we use. They have their own concentrate. Another brand we use is Loba, Loba. Loba has a concentrate. You can buy these on Amazon and you put them in the mop water and they're very gentle. You don't want to be putting down bleach or a very strong soap because it's just going to eat away at that finish faster and it doesn't need it. Your floor just needs to be lightly wiped. The best way to clean your floor is to wring out a rag that's damp and wipe it down by hand. Most people don't want to do that, but that's the best way to do it and to keep the water limited. Also, do not use Murphy's oil soap on your floors. It is the worst thing you can put on your floors unless they are waxed, okay? Murphy's oil soap is supposed to bring the buildup on a waxed floor and it's going to leave residue because it's trying to rejuvenate a waxed floor.
Sure.
Polyurethane's not wax. It's just going to leave basically a residue.
Yeah.
So
I actually knew that one. And the number of times I see Murphy's oil soap recommended on online forums or Facebook groups for old houses, it makes me want to scream.
You should see people's faces when I go into their houses and I tell them that. They all go, and you go, oh, you've been using it, haven't you?
Yeah, it's like blasphemy, right? Like,
right.
Oh my goodness, what are you talking about? I have Rubio Monocoat on my downstairs floors and they have their own proprietary soap. Smells delicious. And I use it like once a year, maybe.
Right.
Like usually I just use hot water and then, or warm water even depending. And the once a year is like after the winter season, because of course you and I live here, we drag in salts, we drag in our dogs, drag in everything, kids, you name it. And so I usually have to break out the soap to kind of do a little extra scrub around the front doors, or the two entrances to get the floor clean. But other than that, water does the trick.
Yeah, and not a lot of it. No, not a lot of it. So
yeah. All right. Well, that's great. All right. Let me see what other questions. Oh, I know what I was going to ask you about. How many times can you sand a floor?
That's a good question.
I guess it depends on how aggressive you are, right?
It does depend on how aggressive it's sanded. Sometimes we get these old Bruce hardwood from like the early 2000s, and they have these big V bevels between each board, and that's like out. Now everything has a micro bevel, and you get a pre-finished floor now, and they don't have those big V's between the boards. So we'll go into an old house and someone says like, I want the V groove out. So we have to sand it super deep to try to get those grooves out. And in that case, we're taking off a lot the first time. But when I do sand, I try to not go deeper than I have to. So I don't exactly know how many sandings you could get out of a floor because I'm usually only there once and I don't know how many times it's been sanded before.
I'll call you again in 50 years.
But, right. But I would think you could get well over 5 on easily 5 times maybe. I mean, I've done my house 3 times in like 5 years because I keep.
Because you can.
Because I can. And I keep wanting to change the color and my wife wants to change. So I've sanded my floors a lot. So I'm probably going to be able to answer that question for you.
Okay. I'll get back with you. I'll get back to you. Yeah. About how much would you say, if you're not sanding aggressively, is taken off each time?
Not a lot. 1/16 of an inch, maybe, or maybe a little more than that. But you'd be surprised because we take the finish off, which has a build. We take the stain out. It can't be that much.
Right. Good.
Yeah, less than you'd think.
Yeah, that's cool. All right. So before we wrap up today, I want to ask you a little bit about hazardous materials. We've had some questions about this. I try to answer questions about hazardous materials as carefully as I can. I am lead safety certified, so yes, I know what to do to keep my family and my home safe, but that doesn't mean that I am a lead certified podcast host who now, I guess I'm technically certified to go on a job site and explain to people how to protect themselves. My certification lasts for 3 years. I'm very proud of that. Can you tell?
I can tell. You should be proud of that.
So I'm going to ask you questions about hazardous materials, and I want to know how you handle stuff like that. Because one of the questions I get a lot is, how can you tell if you have asbestos on your floors? And if you do, what should you do? So what do you think?
When I go into a job and I see black tar on a floor and it's an older Buffalo City house, I'm pretty much going to run. Because I'm going to tell them this is likely asbestos. I'm definitely not going to irritate it with sandpaper. It's like the worst thing you can do. And not to sound this way, but I'm getting enough jobs at this point in my career of floors that aren't covered in asbestos that I'm just going to pass on a job that's questionable. If a customer wants to do the testing and take the proper precautions and show me the results and it's not, I have no problem doing it. But generally stay away. I also work for a few contractors who I'll come in and I'm their floor man basically, and they'll do testing and they'll say, hey, we've had the whole house tested and these floors are good to go for you. If I see glue that was troweled on to adhere tile or something, I also get suspect. I don't know what's in that glue. Also, it's going to turn into gum when I start sanding it. It's just stuff like that. I stay away from it.
Let's go back just a little bit, because when you say black tar, I want to make that clear that that's usually under those linoleum squares sometimes, or even a larger sheet of linoleum, but old, like from mid-century, would you say?
Right. And if people listening Google image like black tar asbestos, that's what we're talking about. It's like tar that was used to adhere a linoleum tile, maybe in the 60s, 70s.
Yeah, even 40s, 50s. Yeah.
Right. You're right. Probably even before then. And it's nasty. It's disgusting. And a lot of the time it can have asbestos. I didn't even know this at first. So when I see that, we pulled up the linoleum, there's some black stuff on the floor, but besides that, the hardwood floor under it's beautiful. Well, I'm saying, I don't know what that is. So
right.
That's something.
And also the testing kits, you can buy those at a big box store. You can buy them online, and then you test the asbestos, you send in the tests, and then, I don't know, you can pay to expedite. Sometimes you can get it back in 72 hours or, a week or two, whatever, if you're not in a hurry. Are there safe ways to remove it? Like, would you recommend people call an abatement company to come in and look?
It's just not something that you're going to want to mess with, because it has long-term effects that could kill you. And why would you, 20 years down the road, if you get sick, why would you say, oh, we should have just hired someone? That's how I feel about it. Is you'll say, oh, we should have just hired someone that time. So to me, I'm like, leave that to the pros.
And by pros, we mean an asbestos abatement company.
Exactly.
Right.
So,
all right. So how about paint? Well, actually, let me go back, because you said something about glue. When do you think that glue, are you talking about? I'm not familiar with the glue from tiles.
So sometimes there's like yellow glue that's down on a floor, and I'm not sure it's asbestos, but again, it's something I stay away from. I'm not going to sand glue off your floor. At this point in my career, maybe I would have taken a job back in the beginning doing that, but
back when you thought you were immortal, right?
Exactly. So that's something I stay away from as well. And if you have glue on your floor, your best bet, if it's asbestos free, is to use a chemical stripper on it, probably, and actually like dissolve it. And then you got to like take a putty knife and smear it all up. It's a messy, messy job.
So since I am familiar with lead paint, I can see it from a mile away. Like
Really?
Pretty much. I feel like I always know if something is lead paint.
You just get that feeling?
I just get that feeling. I can tell based on the sheen, what it looks like, how it's worn, whatever. It's kind of weird. I mean, I will test it, but most of the time I just treat it as if.
Yeah. Because we can easily, the paint isn't lead paint. We can easily sand it up and restore floor. People think painted floors, oh, they were painted, it's over. I'm like, a lot of times they're just preserved because they're under all that paint not getting worn. So paint doesn't deter me as much as long as it's lead free.
Sure.
I have no problem sanding that up. But it's the black tar and like the glues where I just go, let's pass on this one.
Right. Yeah, definitely. That's all the questions I have for you today. Do you have any other last words of wisdom or advice or anything you want to offer to people, DIYers, homeowners?
If you're doing it yourself, good luck. It's a very tough thing to do yourself. It can be done. And I've seen a lot of people do a great job DIYing it. Just always grit sequence. You want to start off with your rough grit, and you don't want to skip grits. Okay. So, 36 grit, 60 grit, 80 grit, 100 grit. You don't want to go from 36 grit to 80 grit. You want to grit sequence properly if you're doing it yourself. You want to start off with the grit you need to strip the floor. If your first pass isn't stripping the floor, you go rougher with the sandpaper. All right. And you need to belt sand first, or drum sand, same thing. And then you need to finish sand and get all your swirls out. And I hope you have good attention to detail, because you're going to need it. So that's
Excellent.
Basically what I can say, I guess.
Great. Well, if somebody is local here and they would like to hire you, what is your website address?
QueenCityRestoration.net.
.net. Okay, that's an important thing to know. And we'll put that in the show notes too.
Awesome. And then we're at Queen City Hardwood on Instagram. And people can inquire right from the website. You can attach photos and you can send them right to me in email or give us a call.
Great. Thank you so much for doing this, Brendon.
Thanks for having me on. It was fun.
It's been wonderful to just sit down and hear about how you got started and have you answer these last questions and spend more time with you. So I appreciate everything.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for listening to True Tales from Old Houses. And thank you to our guests today, Brendon, Brody, and to everyone who submitted floor restoration questions. We really appreciated it and loved answering them.
Don't forget to enter the giveaway for the Cheap Old Houses book and take a peek at our leftover merch. Also, please consider leaving a rating and a review wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts.
And as always, to continue the conversation, join us on Facebook and Instagram at True Tales from Old Houses, where you can follow Stacy at Blake Hill House and myself at Daniel Cantor.
And to learn more about everything we discussed in today's episode or request a transcript, visit truetalesfromoldhouses.com. Until next time.
See you on the mini.